everybody needs to be really quiet because today we're talking about the rogue. And along with the rogue, that means, there we go. Along with that means that we need to be super sneaky. We creep in, and then before you know it, we leap, and we have a great show for you. Just like you've been sneak attacked. I'm going to go with sneak attacked. We'll find out. Today, we are talking about the iconic Pathfinder rogue, Mersiel, and it's starting a series that James and I thought would be really fun to do, where every month we pick a different iconic and we talk about them, kind of explore, and hopefully there's a bigger, grander plan as to why we're talking about that iconic at that certain time. And I think we've decided that the first one we're doing just because we really like this iconic. But then as we go on, there's going to be some things that make sense as far as what else is going on around the bigger world for Paizo and Pathfinder. So again, very first show, we're starting with Mersiel. To do that, guess who we've got with us? As always, James Jacobs is in the house.
Hello,
James, thank you for joining me. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about what an iconic is for folks that may not know. What is a Pathfinder iconic?
So the original goal of the iconic characters was we needed a sort of a control piece of art for each one of our classes, because we use artists from across the world, and not all of them are gamers, and there's a lot of rules, like a rogue won't usually wear plate mail. A wizard is not going to be using a lot of like swords and shields, and a cleric is going to use certain types of holy symbols and stuff that aren't like real world symbols. So we worked with Wayne, who himself comes up with these incredible backstories as he's creating these images, and Wayne himself just understands Pathfinder inside and out, and basically had him build these kind of archetypical iconic heroes for each class. And then we use those to send to artists like, this is what a wizard looks like, do something sort of like this. But at the same point, they kind of are surrogate PCs for us, because when we do an adventure or tell a story or something like that in a campaign setting book or anything like that, we control all of the plot and everything like that in that story, except for the most important one, which is the main character. That's the player character. So we can't illustrate like everybody's own personal character in these illustrations.
Yeah.
And if we use different characters every time we did a fight, it would be like, is that the good guy or the bad guy? What's going on? So having them kind of stand in for your player characters is really one of the goals we use a lot in like adventures and stuff like that.
And that makes a lot of sense. I think it gives an example. It kind of shows you. Mm-hmm. Is there a lot of work that goes into which iconics you're going to be using at a certain time?
Yeah, it's like when we do an adventure path, one of the things we want to do is we want to try to pick a combination of characters that's like, that makes sense for a party of adventurers. Like the classic of like the fighter, the cleric, the rogue, and the wizard is the classic, adventuring party. But you don't want to do those characters every single time, so you start mixing it up. It also gets complicated if we, because they're scaling things. If you have like Lenny, who's really short, and a bunch of tall characters, that's quite complicated.
Yeah.
So it's also really boils down to like who you used last time on the previous one, who are the ones that you are particularly interested in, illustrating, who hasn't been shown off a lot before. So yeah, it's tricky. I mean, they also are characters we use in a lot of like conventions for like just games that people want to sit down and try out a new game or something like that. We'll have pre-generated characters based on these iconics.
Right, and that's usually helps because it depends on, well, what do you usually play? Even if you've not played this before, what type of class do you usually play? And there's usually something there for you.
Yep.
And then I guess that would mean also whenever a new book comes out that has a new class that's introduced in it, that means you have to develop, a whole new iconic has to come along with that. What's the process usually behind that?
That's pretty early. We really, once we get the kind of the basic idea for the class, we start figuring out what exactly it's going to do. All of the rules, things like, does it use swords? Does it use big weapons? Does it, cast spells? Does it like dress in blue or whatever? All these different, elements. We start figuring out those things. We get a basic idea of that. And then we will compare it to what we've done before. We really value diversity among our iconics. So we keep this master list of like, ethnicities and ancestries and alignments and who they worship, where they're from. All of these, we have this giant spreadsheet of all that stuff.
Oh, right.
So like when we make somebody new, it's like, well, we have never had this, we've never had a gnome from Galt, for example. Maybe it's time to do a Galt gnome.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like starting fitting puzzle pieces together and all that.
So then, I would imagine, do you know in your head how many Pathfinder Iconics we have total?
I think it's about 40.
About 40. So it's a big list.
Yeah, and it's kind of even bigger. So we got these weird sort of pseudo iconics too that we use for like things like prestige classes or archetypes or that just characters that kind of like show up over and over and over, that like maybe you start to sneak in a character of your own into the art order. That may happen now and then.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's for the Pathfinder Kingmaker, the CRPG that Owlcat Games has done. They have a Miri in there. The rest of the folks, and this has kind of come up online. Just I want to make sure the rest of them are not our iconics.
And
but
that's really the definition of an iconic. The iconic is the one character we've chosen to epitomize a class. Everyone else is just a character. They could be popular, and some of them are really popular, but they're not actually iconic characters.
And just again, they represent that class. You know? So Indigo Jones, welcome. Alinea, welcome. So today we are kicking off a series. Because we went back and you told me, so as far as like the main iconics, there's 12.
There's 12
of the main iconics. Yep. And it was like, well, it's a new year. There happens to be 12 months in the year.
Yep.
It's a great idea. Let's pick a different one every month and kind of, talk about that one. Yeah. And I think we've got the first 3 maybe figured out, possibly. Enough that we can preview next week's show.
Yep.
Or next month's show. We can preview that. But then there's a lot of things also going into this time right now. Is we've got 2nd edition coming out. We've got new art for some of those iconics.
Yeah, we got new art for all of them.
They're going to look different. Yeah. And so because I'm just one little tiny show here at Paizo, they're not going to let me break that information, but we're going to try to show things as we can and try to pick things that make sense. At this time, it would be a good time to do it. So expect it'll be a little hand-picked before we get to the release at Gen Con of 2nd edition.
Yep.
After that, we're going to have a little bit more free time with it, because everything will be out of the bag by that point. So we hope you enjoy the series that we're trying to put together here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. For me, the iconics are something that have always been there. You know who they are, but I don't know a whole lot about them, because it's like every time you see them, most of the time, they're either on a banner at the Sagamore Ballroom or they're in an AP, and that doesn't really give me any information.
No.
So. And those of you out there are going to know I'm Team Rogue forever. That's just how it goes. So I'm really excited that this first one is going to be Mersiel.
Yep.
So first off, let's start with, what is Mersiel as far as class and ancestry and background and all of that sort of thing?
So Mersiel is a rogue. She's a elf, forlorn elf in particular. When we first started up Pathfinder over 10 years ago, she kind of did double duty, because we had Wayne. Basically, we needed to design the look of our rogue character. So the rogue should be kind of a swashbuckler, kind of a sneaky, limber looking character. At the same point, we need him to design the elf.
The elf, yeah, absolutely.
So with that's where Wayne started, going over some potential ideas and stuff. We had to back and forth, like whether that ears going way out like that, or straight up like that, or short ears, or all sorts of different permutations. Wayne was the one, I believe, that came up with the look that is just the solid colors for their eyes.
The solid eyes.
Yeah, which kind of dovetails into some of the other really cool backstory stuff that we developed for elves. I brought in from my own home campaign the fact that elves are actually from another planet and have come to this planet that they now live on. So they're not really fey creatures in Pathfinder. A lot of other settings are like they're these natural creatures that are tied into the realm of the fairies and all that. Mm-hmm. That's more the role of the gnome in Pathfinder. Elves are pretty much aliens. You can almost think of them as like these weird sort of, not quite gray aliens, but just that's what they got. That sort of, they're tall, they're really lanky, they're not shorter than humans. And they got those creepy, solid color eyes. Yeah,
and King of Rock is actually jumping in ahead in chat, saying, especially since they're aliens. Mm-hmm. So, it is one of those things that when you see the evolution of what the Pathfinder elf ended up becoming, how much of the fact that it was being designed for a rogue class Do you think that had any influence into how the elves ended up looking?
A little bit. Classically, the elf is always the classic elf in RPGs and stuff is like kind of the wizard or the fighter wizard or that type of character. So we deliberately didn't want to do our elf to be a fighter or a wizard. So we went with rogue because that was something that kind of veered away from the classic traditions. Another thing that came across really early on in developing elves and Mersiel in particular was I've always been fascinated by this idea that elves are so long-lived. They live for hundreds of years. That's gotta mess with your head when you live with like people who live like maybe 80 years or something like that.
Right.
So that's where we came up with the idea for the Forlorn, which is a type of elf that basically doesn't live with other elves. They live with humans or dwarves or whatever. They live with other creatures.
Right.
And growing up, your childhood friends are going to grow old and die of old age, and you're still like basically 20 years old.
Yeah.
So
Mersiel,
that messes with your head.
Mersiel is a forlorn.
Mersiel is forlorn elf, yeah.
And where did she grow up?
We haven't. So to back up a little bit, what we do with a lot of all of our iconics is we do like a meet the iconic story whenever we introduce new ones, and they come out. They get posted on our blogs. A lot of those stories ended up getting reprinted in other books. We have like the NPC guide, and I think the NPC Codex did a lot of the iconic stuff in the back of it. So a lot of those stories are there if you want to go get the nitty gritty details and stuff like that. So we build these kind of stories, their backgrounds really. We don't know what their actual adventures are. That's another weird thing about them is because we use them to illustrate first level adventures, 20th level adventures, everything in between, and over and over and over. So they're we don't really ever say that Mersiel is always a 7th level rogue. Sometimes she is. Sometimes she's not. So
it depends on the narrative at the time, which book in the AP we're at.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
I gotcha.
It's really kind of loosey-goosey. But the background, whatever happened before they adventured, is where we get to build up their characters and all that. And with Mersiel, when I started working on her story and all of that, I really didn't want to start making something else entirely new because it was like, we've already got new. This is Mersiel, this is an elf and all that. So I basically tied it in with what we were doing with Rise of the Rune Lords. So she's spent a lot of her youth in Magnamar.
Okay. And just to be clear, an AP is an adventure path. Yeah. And when we make the games, we the PCs are represented in the adventure path by the Iconics. So yeah.
So her story is basically she doesn't really have much. I don't think we said much about like her parents and all that. She's maybe an orphan or something like that. It's sort of mysterious, I believe.
Perfectly mysterious for a rogue. That's fine.
Yeah. So she grew up in Magnamar, was like hanging out with a bunch of the thieves guilds there. Wasn't really a nice person at that point. Did a lot of like, skulking around on the rooftops, robbing people. Maybe somebody got hurt. Maybe somebody got really hurt.
Yeah.
Eventually she moved out of Magnamar and kind of did this world tour of the inner sea region, went to different, cities down along the coast, got thrown in jail a couple times, fell in love a couple times, ended up basically exploring everything and kind of got, the homesickness going back and ended up back in Magnamar and then she was off to her actual for real adventures. It's one of the side notes about that is it's really difficult to get this entire story about what they were doing before they, started adventuring and present it in a way that doesn't make it sound like they did that much. Why aren't they still first level? So there's a little bit of like,
Yeah, you kind of, a little bit of shrugging on that. Like,
it's like maybe she's not first level when she finishes. But again, what level she is in any illustration.
Yeah. When you were giving me images to put into the show, this was actually one of my favorites. I just showed that. I love this.
One of the cool things that I love doing with the Iconics is they've got a specific look. They always wear the same clothes. They're like superheroes. If you put them in different clothes, you don't recognize them. Or it's hard to recognize.
It's hard, yeah.
And so as we got Pathfinder established and we started doing other products and other books and stuff like that, we were able to start messing around. Mersiel's a rogue. She's not always going to be like crawling around in the dungeons, unlocking doors and robbing, picking pockets and stuff like that. The idea with the maid Mersiel there is that she's infiltrating some sort of high fancy society party or something like that. It's like got hired as the help for a special party, and she's like bringing out the roast turkey and all that. And you'll notice, she's taken off her little gem that she keeps on her forehead.
Yeah.
Which and then she's got her knife ready to
And
stab
she's
someone.
definitely reaching for one of her many.
Oh yeah, somebody's gonna grab that turkey and get a throatful of dagger.
Exactly, and that's the thing is
They
like
deserve it.
Just like her standard art, all of those things coming off of her shoulder blades.
Those are all daggers.
All daggers. Like
Yeah.
she is daggered to the hilt.
Oh,
Puns.
You're funny.
But and that is her thing. Like she basically solves all of her problems with a dagger if she has
that's the point. It's like if the problem can't be solved with a knife, you're just not stabbing enough.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it's also there's other things too, like with her original image for Wayne. He created this image and basically like picked her colors and all of that stuff. But like looking, it's like you start picking out other things. Like she's got that little ribbon of black and yellow ribbon on her belt.
Right.
And that's just like a little ribbon. It doesn't really mean anything. But I was looking at this like, well, maybe that means she's a worshiper of Calistria, which is the elven deity.
Yeah.
A deity of like lust and revenge and trickery.
Yes.
And she really fits in good in the trickery element of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so yellow and black are kind of this wasp kind of insect colors, which is associated with Calistria. So it just worked out really well.
The savored sting.
The savored sting. Yep.
I think Calistria is one of the better choices for a deity if you're a rogue.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's perfect.
So
flavor wise, I think it works out so well.
So that's one of the fun things about illustrating adventure paths and stuff like this is they get into sort of shenanigans and things like that. All adventure paths you start out like the party getting together in the tavern is the classic.
Right.
So we do illustrations like this one where we've got the four iconics kind of doing their thing around the table. Valorous is passed out drunk. Sione's like in some sort of debate. Kira's just like trying to take it in and just be calm and centered. And Mersiel, of course, that's not her chair. That's not her bag that she's fishing stuff out of.
Yeah, but
if they wanted to keep it, they shouldn't have left it there.
It's just it's in reach. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
Someone's got to pay for it. It might as well be that dude who left his chair to go to the bathroom or something.
So let's talk about the fact that when she was infiltrating as a maid, a server, and she was able to remove the stone from her forehead.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of that? Where does that come from, and when does she or when does she not wear that?
Basically, it's an affectation, one of many that Wayne has given all of these characters. The gemstone, on one level, helps the viewer who's looking at a picture. If you see a bunch of elves, that green gemstone that's Mersiel, and those other white-haired elves are her toadies.
Yeah.
So that really is like her little thing. Like Valorous has his tankard. Kira's got the tattoos underneath her eyes. Sione's got a lot of tattoos. They've all got sort of things that not everybody would have, but they specifically have. And that's kind of Mersiel's, like her little ribbon and her forehead gemstone. The gemstone itself is just jewelry. I mean, it's like on there with paste or something like that, or magic glue or whatever. They've got plenty. People in the real world have, the ability to it's not a pierced brain. She's not that extreme.
I guess that's true. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, it's just a gemstone.
Okay, so it's decorative.
It's decorative. Yeah.
Probably. And is there a story where she got that gemstone?
Not really.
Okay.
There is one of the comics actually has a subplot. I'm trying not to do too many spoilers, but it has a subplot where it may or may not become haunted.
Oh, really?
Or influenced by some sort of divinity.
I like that.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
In fact, speaking of the comics, there's a whole there's an issue dedicated to her as the origins, which is the image that I used for the social media post, because I didn't want to use any of the images you gave me for the show because I didn't want to burn through. But there's comics dedicated to the origin
and the
of
comics.
Mersiel.
There are comics that do the origins, but there's also the comics really are a way we can tell the actual stories, like the first time Mersiel and Kira and Valorous and Sione and all of these characters in Harskin, they get together and go on their adventures is really kind of, their background's done. Now we get to actually tell stories, because we can't do that with adventures.
Yeah, because they have to kind of live in the now. They have to live in that moment.
Exactly.
So let's talk about Kira a little bit and get into that. So how did Mersiel and Kira meet?
So we've got that. That was one of the very first Pathfinder comics we did that story, where they basically met while they were all going out to save the town of Sandpoint from goblins and mutants and all that whatnot. But that was really even before then. When we first started making these characters, we knew that they were going to be, adventuring party. They were going to be friends. They had to work together. They had to, just like a good player group, you have to basically have each other's back. So I started early on thinking, like, well, which one of them might have like maybe even brother sisters or some sort of relationship. And I really wanted early on to have representation for different sexualities and stuff like that. So Mersiel is bisexual, and having her and Kira's lesbian, having them basically be the first two among the first characters that we put into the game, helped us to get that front and center and all that. So they're basically a couple. There's a couple of comic books go into their relationship, how it grows up and matures and all of that, and it's pretty cool seeing just that whole thing play out. But that's one thing that I play along with a lot in illustrations, is that the two of them are together. And that illustration you just had up was from an adventure path I won't name, so it's no spoilers. But there's a spooky dinner party that you got to go to, and it's like there's a bunch of like witches running the place, and there's like maybe maybe the food's kind of gross, and you might like take some maybe alignment things if you eat too much of this this meat or whatever. And Mersiel's like all about it, because like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to get to hang out and have fancy food, and they're dancing, and there's going to be all sorts of shenanigans. Yeah. And Kira's like, I don't know. I heard they worship demons in there. And so Mersiel's like, come on, we'll have fun. That's another case where we like put them in different clothing so that they don't always, now that we've established their look, just like we did with her as a maid, that's them dressed up in like the fancy gowns and all that stuff. And
I do like I like that it's it's still on the color palette.
Yeah,
it's still
that's
right there.
Absolutely true. We do keep the color palette so it still makes sense.
Still recognizable. Yep. And I think that looks great. I love the I guess Victorian gown or whatever you want to call it. It looks awesome.
Yeah. We've got a couple other other things that we do as well as like for Kingmaker, for example.
Yeah.
Mersiel wasn't one of the iconic characters we put into that adventure path, but when we do like the support articles and stuff at the back, we generally use other iconics who aren't the stars of the adventure, so that it doesn't get confusing.
Okay.
And so we were coming up with this article about how to build cities and build your nations and all that stuff. And Mersiel again is my favorite, so it's like I want to have her in that picture, but she's not going to be working. So she's like sprawled down there. Yeah, put that board over there.
It's like I'm good.
Hit that nail harder. Bring me my mint julep. So she's basically she's probably doing a very important job there. Like if she wasn't there, they'd just be running around doing nothing.
I'm sure that there's all kinds of organization that's happening.
And you have to make sure the hammocks work, because if the hammocks don't work, you don't want to break that.
So then that brings up an interesting question. Mersiel's drink of choice would be a mojito?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, done. All right. Put that
Raspberry
in the wiki.
Mojito.
Mark, I hope you're listening. Put that in the wiki.
That's another thing too. It's like a lot of the times when we start doing these details on characters and stuff like that, it's like you start coming up with these little quirks and stuff and things. And I've been building Mersiel's character for a long, long time, and I put a lot of myself in her actually. So I really like raspberry mojitos. So,
well, there you go.
There you go. So that's easy for me to remember that I like raspberry drinks and stuff like that. Then if somebody just asked me out of the blue, it's like, sure, why not? Ask me about some other NPC or something. I was like, I'll have to think a little bit. But and part of that too is when we first were doing playtests of Pathfinder, we did a lot of internal playtesting and running adventures and stuff like that. And of course, Mersiel is the character that I used in that playtest. And Jason Bowman ran that when it was Crypt of the Everflame.
Oh yeah.
And was running us through that adventure, running us through, stabbing us. He'd roll the thing up into a tube and an alien just stab it at us. And, so there's some of Mersiel's character traits and quirks come from that adventure. There was one room in there's a bat swarm, and I saw a shiny thing. And I was like, I'm going to get that shiny thing because it's important. And I ran in there and the bats attacked. And bats swarms are awful when you're first level because they bleed you to death, and it's just terrible. And I started bleeding all over the place, and whoever was playing the cleric, I forgot who it was, I want to hit them, I don't want to heal, because anyway, that's a different story. So yeah, Mersiel was I was
stories now.
I don't want to kill my character because I bled out from bats when I was trying to get the magic treasure or whatever. So that all basically segues into the fact that Mersiel has got this deathly phobia of bats and bat-like creatures.
Right,
So,
right. Which and that's one of those things that gets to evolve.
Yeah.
Which is great. So, and then that kind of brings up a quick question: is if people are playing with one of the iconics as they're playing through an AP,
Right.
I would imagine that they can kind of shape that iconic to fit their table game that they're doing.
Well, yeah, if you were running an adventure path with one of an iconics rather than making your own character, by all means, take whatever you want, build them out however you want, explore what they do on your own. Because that's one of the big things. The best part about a role-playing game to me, when you're playing it, is getting into the character and exploring a new personality.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so we're starting to kind of run out of time here, just a little bit for the first segment. What are some of the more fun adventures and things that you personally have played or written with Mersiel and the adventures that she's been in?
Since she's the third iconic we ever premiered, she's been around longer than any other iconic with the exception of Valoris and Sione. Valoris and Sione we got super early.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got those two characters, they were among the first characters we ever got. So we were able to use them. That's why in the early adventure stuff, you see them showing up all the time. We had their art. Mersiel was the third one, though. So she's been all over the place. I mean, one that comes to mind is Souls for Smuggler Shiv, the first adventure for Serpent Skull adventure path. Starts out with the party getting shipwrecked on an island and all that, and you've got to basically survive on this island with zero resources and stuff like that.
Right.
And so you need food.
Yeah.
And needing breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right?
It is. It
so
is.
It's like, why not go up on that cliff and get that nice fat egg out of that nest? And if there's a dinosaur flying around, or a pterosaur, a Dimorphodon to be specific, that's what knives are for.
That's
Again,
awesome.
solving problems by sticking them with daggers.
And again, if you've got a problem,
Yeah.
she can solve it with a dagger.
Yep.
If not, it's not a problem, and you shouldn't worry about it anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's just really fun exploring what these characters can do in art, what they do in stories and all that. I've always wanted to do I've always wanted to do a really bigger exploration of Mersiel's history and all that, like as a novel or something like that. I haven't written any of the comics that she starred in, so
Right.
I've got a lot of just stuff noodling around in here that someday maybe it'll get out. But until then, it'll leak out in these. Whenever you see her doing something in a piece of art in a book or something, it's
Right.
like, why is she climbing up onto that statue when there's a ladder?
Yeah, exactly.
There's
I think
a reason.
we were just talking before the show started. I think it was Intersea Taverns. I think is maybe what it was. There was a full image where there's just all kinds of bedlam going on, where I think they're being attacked by a dragon or something is breaking through, and I think it's Valoros is trying to fight it off. And in the background, you can see Mersiel with the till open, just taking advantage of that time where everyone's kind of
I like to think that the
otherwise
bartender is
engaged.
dead, and she's trying to honor his memory by making sure that his hard-earned, coins don't end up in a lesser person's pocket.
It's good spin, James. It's good spin.
it's
I
good
like
spin.
it. So that kind of brings us up on the end of the first segment. Do we want to preview what we're going to be talking about next month?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that. We are building on what we talked about today, and with Mersiel, and then going into next month, we'll be talking about Kira.
Yeah.
Kira. I say it wrong every time. I'm fine until I look at it written out.
Oh, no.
Whenever I see it written out, which I have it on the Stream Deck, I have it written onto the button.
Fair enough.
So next month, we'll be talking about Kira.
Yep.
And that'll be the next iconic that we'll be talking. And then we think we might know some of those next ones, but we'll hold off on that just yet.
With Kira as well. I mean, all of these iconics, we'll talk about the iconic, obviously, but we're also going to be talking about some of the wider world elements that associate with them. That's sort of a framing thing for us to get more information. Like with Mersiel, for example, we talked a little bit about elves and the Forlorn and stuff like that. With Kira, we're going to talk a little bit like a religion and stuff. She's the cleric.
Right.
So she's got a lot of religion. And that's a big part of the Pathfinder setting.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I'm really also excited about, beyond that, is being able to show off some of second edition gaming mechanics through the iconics. And that really is the big bulk of why we're kind of hindered as to how we get this schedule going.
We're going to be going forward. We're going to start using these iconics to talk about how differently they may work in the new game, how their art may have changed, all of that stuff. With Mersiel, we picked her for a lot of reasons. She's the best one. That's the
Right.
top reason, obviously. But rogues are they do the same thing in both games. They kind of run
true.
the same way. Her art, we're really pleased with how Mersiel's art and Kira on the same. Both of them have art that they pretty much look very similar in the new game, but they're in different poses and maybe a few adjustments here and there.
Right, and that's the other part too is
Mersiel might have picked up more daggers. I haven't counted.
Mersiel might have more daggers, and and there's been a few changes, cosmetically, but nothing that changes the
we
the
really
template
wanted
of the character.
all of the iconics to be the same iconics. That's very that's valuable. If you played first edition and you go into the second edition, you're like, that's the cleric, that's the fighter, that's.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, like I said, we'll be doing one of these a month, going out for the whole year. Exactly what that schedule is, because here's the thing: if some news about second edition comes out, where it's like, oh, that mechanic got released, cool. Let's
we
do
might
the
do
one
something
that
right in the start of the month. Yeah.
The one thing that I can promise you, because we've already talked about this, is that the iconic that we know the least about, in my mind anyway, is Fumbus.
Yeah. I don't even know if we've.
I don't think we have. We haven't done a Meet the Iconic.
We haven't
for
done a
Fumbus.
Meet the Iconics for anything. We haven't yet officially even put his name, I don't think, in print. So if you know his name is Fumbus, it's kind of leaked out on the message boards or The Iconic alchemist is the goblin named Fumbus.
Right. We are definitely going to be doing that before Gen Con. That's the plan. So look forward to that. That will be pretty much all new information as far as I can tell.
Yep.
I'm trying to build up what is going to be exclusive to the channel, and that's going to be it. So anything else?
No, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been
looking
fun.
forward to exploring. We might get some other people in here to talk about their favorite iconics if we can.
That's what I'm hoping for sure. Not that I don't want you in the chair.
Or
but
if people are interested in iconics, maybe we want to do something with famous NPCs, do one about Queen Abigail or do one about the Whispering Tyrant or stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's another way we can explore stuff.
Maybe we can get. I know Linda does really good cosplay.
Oh my god!
It's really good. She did it.
She's
PaizoCon.
spot on. Yeah,
yeah, it's really
Eric
good.
Keith is Valoros.
Valoros, perfectly. I have a picture of both of them from
Jason
PaizoCon.
Bowman just rocks the Lenny cosplay.
Oh man,
he does the Snow Leopard and Lenny at the same time. I don't know how he does it.
Huh? Interesting.
Yeah.
Now you know what? We're gonna have to make that happen. We just have him sit right there, next to you at the couch. All right, let's do this. Let's wrap up this first part right here, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So,
sounds good.
I want to thank James Jacobs for sitting in and talking all about Mersiel, the iconic rogue for Pathfinder. This rogue will also be into Pathfinder 2. I saw some questions in the chat. Yes, most of the iconics are going to be moving into second edition. So that's kind of why we want to cover them now. And this is just the beginning of 12 more that we're going to be doing. So we're super excited about that. If you like the video, please feel free to give it a like. If you have a favorite iconic, tell me in the comments down below. And beyond that, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. So for Paizo, and for James Jacobs, and for me, I'm your old buddy Dan, same as always. We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.